Okay people, it's time for us to continue my Destiny 2 subclass tier list video series. We're in the home stretch now with only 3 subclasses left to talk about, and they all belong to the Hunter. If you missed any of the previous episodes, be sure to check them out by clicking the link in the top right now. We talked about the rules I'm using to tier each subclass branch and had plenty of interesting things to discuss about Destiny 2's design philosophies. That discussion and the tiering process is going to continue today with the Hunter's solar subclass, the Gunslinger. Let's get started. Every subclass in Destiny 2 has universal mechanics it can take advantage of. For the Gunslinger, we have 2 class abilities, Gambler's Dodge and Marksman's Dodge, 3 jump types, High Jump, Strafe Jump, and Triple Jump, and 3 grenades, the Incendiary Grenade, the Swarm Grenade, and the Trip Mine. With those universal mechanics in mind, we're going to start things off with the Gunslinger's bottom branch, the Way of the Sharpshooter. Its melee ability is Weighted Knife. You throw a knife that deals extra precision damage, and precision knife kills fully recharge the ability. Practice Makes Perfect is a passive. Precision hits speed up your super generation. Knock 'em Down is another passive. Precision kills increase weapon stability and handling. Your super does more damage when you cast it with your buff at 20 seconds or more remaining. Finally, Line 'em Up is another passive ability. It enables precision damage with your Golden Gun super, and precision hits with Golden Gun generate orbs of light, increase its damage, and extend its duration. The Way of the Sharpshooter is an incredibly difficult subclass to play effectively, but just because something is challenging doesn't mean it's not worth using and mastering. We touched on this a little bit in the last video when we talked about the Titan's Code of the Devastator, but we're going to dive a little deeper this time. I personally enjoy classes that have a high skill ceiling, but there's a delicate balancing act to consider if you want to make something easy to learn and hard to master. Players have to be rewarded for investing their time into mastering skills, and with the Sharpshooter, the barrier to entry is actually pretty high, but the rewards are incredible. If you're a Destiny 2 veteran, then you already know about the Celestial Nighthawk exotic helmet. Its exotic perk changes the Golden Gun super for the Gunslinger, specifically the Way of the Sharpshooter, into the most powerful one-shot attack in the game. That by itself is amazing, but what makes it better is the Sharpshooter's kit is designed to help you get to that super faster. It rewards you for precision with your weapons and abilities, but you have to play consistently well to reap the full benefits of all of your abilities. Knife trick resets are self-explanatory. If you can't pop heads, you don't get resets, and your potential damage goes down significantly. Practice Makes Perfect has a simple effect, but again, it rewards an accurate player, which oftentimes I am not. Finally, Knock 'em Down continues rewarding the most accurate players by giving the strongest burst damage super in the game even more damage if you can add good timing to your accuracy. Golden Gun and Celestial Nighthawk is a god killer, but sometimes you need a little bit of extra oomph to take down an enemy. Knock 'em Down is that little bit of extra. This is a beautiful system, and it's part of why the subclass branch is so great, but it does have shortcomings. Its area damage is basically non-existent. Your only way to deal with packs of enemies is your grenade ability, and the Gunslinger's grenades are mediocre at best. You also have 0 survivability in your kit, and none of the Gunslinger-specific exotics rectify that problem. That fact isn't unusual for the Hunter, but having ways to keep yourself alive is important, especially at higher difficulties. That said, with good play, you can make sure that your super is always ready to eliminate the biggest threats on the map, which makes tough encounters a lot easier. Overall, I'm in a tough spot with this one. Golden Gun on the subclass branch is an S-tier super with exotics for its damage, but without an exotic, you make a silly amount of orbs of light for your teammates, so it's got great utility and great damage. But the other aspects of the Sharpshooter's kit are on par with things you'd find in A-tier or B-tier. Weighted Knife is a fun melee, and its damage is one of the highest in the games, but it's limited to only hitting a single target, and the Titan's Code of the Devastator can do more single target damage with a single throw of its throwing hammer melee. Weighted Knife is going to lose even more points when we start talking about the other Gunslinger knives. All of your grenade options are mediocre at best, and your passive abilities scale heavily with your own skill level. In other words, if you suck, the Way of the Sharpshooter won't feel nearly as good as it should. The final question, is Golden Gun enough to make this subclass branch S-tier? The sad answer is no. You see, the S-tier is a prestigious place to be. It's not reserved for one-trick ponies, it's reserved for subclass branches that go above and beyond what players thought was possible in multiple categories. It's a place where unquestionable power meets a variety of situations and doesn't waver in the face of any of them. The way of the sharpshooter wavers in a lot of moments in Destiny 2's sandbox, but its power is still unquestionable. It's an A-tier subclass branch simply because it has too many big shortcomings to go all the way to the top. On the opposite end of the spectrum in more ways than one, we have the Gunslinger's top branch, the Way of the Outlaw. Its melee ability is Proximity Explosive Knife. You throw a knife that attaches to a surface upon impact and explodes when it detects an enemy nearby. Chains of Woe is a passive ability. Precision kills increase weapon reload speed for you and nearby allies. Deadshot is another passive that significantly improves your ability to hit with Golden Gun. Finally, 6-shooter is a passive for your super. Golden Gun can be fired quickly up to 6 times and refunds a bullet with each kill. The Way of the Outlaw got a slight rework recently, but unfortunately the rework didn't do what really needed to be done. There's a lot of things that go into making a class feel good, and one of those things is aesthetics. Through most of this series I've been talking about the performance of things, but looks are important too. Up to now, every branch on this list has looked great. The feelings have been off in a few places, and performance has a lot of variance, but every subclass in this game looks good, except for the Way of the Outlaw. Its melee ability Prox Explosive Knife has a pathetic looking explosion. I mean, it's like a little firecracker, and I don't want to throw little firecrackers, I want to throw bombs. Its damage isn't horrible, and its radius is on par with a lot of other area damage abilities in the game, but it looks bad, so I don't like using it. Chains of Woe is a decent passive ability. It's easy to trigger, and its effects are consistent, so in terms of design, it's not in a bad place. It has a good balance between the effect you're gaining and how difficult the effect is to trigger, but with that said, it's a low-tier ability for 2 reasons. First, it doesn't contribute to a gameplay loop for the branch, and second, it's a part of the Destiny 2 sandbox. An ability not contributing to a gameplay loop is fine, but those kinds of abilities have to be strong enough to stand on their own, and Chains of Woe isn't because its effects aren't valuable in the Destiny sandbox. I said this with regards to the Sunbreaker Titan's Tempered Metal ability too. Players aren't wanting for subclass branch abilities to make their guns reload faster. We look for reload perks on our guns, armor, and exotic armor, and we want our subclass branches to affect the way our abilities interact with the game. Now, if a subclass branch is going to do something with my weapons, it's got to do more than increase the reload speed. More single target damage, lifesteal, crowd control. There's a lot of stuff that you can tack onto Chains of Woe to make it better, but in its current state, it's very lackluster. Moving on from there, this branch has 2 passive abilities that affect Golden Gun, and neither of them make this version of the super worth using. The 6-shooter Golden Gun's damage is not great against bosses, and it won't help you clear out packs of enemies better than any other roaming super. In fact, the 6-shooter Golden Gun is the worst roaming super in the game. I didn't think I was going to say this, but the Stormcaller's Tickle Fingers are better than the 6-shooter Golden Gun. So that begs the question, what's the point? Well, there is no point, and that fact is sadly why we're going to stop talking about the Way of the Outlaw. This subclass branch is complete trash. Don't waste your time playing it because it's F tier. Feels bad. Last up, we're going to talk about the Gunslinger's middle branch, the Way of 1000 Cuts. Its melee ability is Knife Trick. You throw a fan of flaming knives that burn targets on hit. The Burning Edge is a passive ability. While enemies burn, your dodge ability recharges faster. Playing with Fire is another passive that causes destroying burning enemies to grant a stack of a buff that speeds up the cooldown of Knife Trick. Finally, your super is no longer Golden Gun, it's Blade Barrage. You vault into the air and unleash a volley of solar-charged explosive knives. The Way of 1000 Cuts is spectacular. It combines a lot of concepts that I've been talking about over the course of this video series into one of the most cohesive and enjoyable experiences you can get in Destiny 2. The Burning Edge and Playing with Fire passive abilities are the perfect marriage of on-hit effects and on-kill effects. They work together to ensure that you have a gameplay loop to engage with, whether you're fighting a pack of miners, majors, bosses, or just the biggest bad guy in the room, and it gets better with your skill level. To make things even more impressive for this subclass branch, the skill floor is very low, but you can take things incredibly high. Your melee ability Knife Trick does great damage. It has an incredibly high frequency of use, and it's easy to use because it throws out a wide arc of 3 projectiles. If you've got bad aim, you'll find yourself hitting enemies even if your reticle is a little off because of the way the knives fan out. As you improve, you'll start landing all 3 blades on stronger enemies for massive damage, and against hordes of trash, you'll fan them out to hit and burn multiple targets to trigger your 2 passives. Then we've got the fact that this branch plays well within Destiny 2's sandbox. Whenever I'm using the Way of 1,000 Cuts, I feel like I'm engaging with Destiny 2 the way it's meant to be played. I feel like an agile hunter that can move and shoot hundreds of times better than the rank and file Cabal, Hive, and Fallen that are trying to blow my head off. My Knife Trick doesn't care that much about precision, but it does reward me for hitting enemies in the head, but I just need to be careful enough to hit something, so that frees me up to move as crazy as I want, but I can't move unencumbered. Like a lot of Hunter subclass branches, the Way of 1,000 Cuts doesn't have any sustain or defense in its kit, so if you play too aggressively, you're gonna die. But it's a reasonable trade-off because your DPS output is incredible. So that's just the base level functionality of the Way of 1,000 Cuts. When we add exotics into the mix, it allows you to enhance your existing gameplay loops or create completely new ones. The Young Ahamkara Spine's exotic perk enhances your trip mine grenade's duration and blast radius and causes your ability damage to reduce the cooldown of the trip mine. Playing with fire and the Knife Trick have amazing synergy with this exotic. Once you're at max stack, you'll be throwing knives very consistently, and hitting all 3 knives completely resets your trip mine. The damage you can do with that combo is impressive, but the only downside is the trip mine's blast radius isn't that large unless you can stick it onto a wall. Even still, it works great for dealing with single target majors and mini bosses. The Ophidia Spathe exotic chest piece has a perk that gives you an extra melee charge whenever your melee ability recharges. Once again, playing with fire helps you to get the most out of that perk, and once again, the damage output is phenomenal. Finally, the subclass branch specific exotic, the Shards of Galanor, has the exotic perk that causes hits and kills with the super to refund energy. You can refund up to 50% of the super, and that is a lot. While we're on the subject, Blade Barrage isn't the best super in the game, but it is very versatile. Its damage to single targets is a bit inconsistent. The amount of hits you land with your blades will depend on the size of the target and your distance from them. Essentially, the closer you are, the better your damage will be because the more likely you are to hit all of your knives. Blade Barrage was clearly designed to be strong against packs of enemies though, and it does well at dealing with that. You throw out 2 volleys of knives so you can fan them out over an incredibly large area, or concentrate the fire towards a dense pack. Blade Barrage does take a little getting used to, but it's a solid super, and you'll get to use it a lot if you're using the Shards of Galanor. So, now it's time for the $1,000 question. Where does this subclass branch go on our tier list? Well, the Way of 1,000 Cuts has an amazing gameplay loop that creates a neutral game that is unmatched by most of the game's cast. While it doesn't have any survivability, it dishes out enough damage to compensate. It also feels incredible to play. Whenever I use it, I feel like I'm engaging with the game the way it's meant to be engaged with. The worst part about its kit is the Blade Barrage Super, but that's like saying the worst part of a banana split is the banana. You're not wrong, but it's still delicious, so who cares? Blade Barrage doing inconsistent damage against single targets is a legitimate mark against it, and I wouldn't call it the best ad clear super in the game, but it's very high on the list. I'm a little bit surprised to say this, but the Way of 1,000 Cuts is going to fall into the S tier. I think it's controversial to put this subclass branch above the Way of the Sharpshooter, with its Celestial Nighthawk literally deleting enemies from the game, no questions asked. But remember, A tier is where you put the great stuff. S tier goes above and beyond. It embodies everything Destiny is supposed to feel like, and it's got unquestionable power to back up those good feelings, and it never backs down. And there we go, that's going to do it for the Gunslingers portion of the subclass tier list video series. We only have 2 more subclasses and their respective branches to talk about, so we are again in that home stretch. But don't worry, there is going to be a lot more Destiny 2 content coming in the future. The Beyond Light expansion is coming out. They're releasing 3 new Stasis subclasses, and I'm sure those will be interesting to talk about as well. And to make builds for, there's new exotics, there's a lot of stuff coming on the horizon, especially for Patreon subscribers. Once the Beyond Light expansion starts, the bonus video content is going to start flowing again, but if you've never seen any of the bonus videos that I've made, where I talk about the creative process that I have for making my videos and do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, you can check the link in the description right now. With all of that said, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support the channel more than you already do just by watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting, you can head over to patreon.com/iBluairJgR to become a patron. As always, the name of the game is Destiny 2, the name of the channel is iBluairJgR. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.